The studio lights felt warmer than usual, the applause louder, the smiles a little tighter. Leanne Morgan sat comfortably at first, doing what she did best, turning everyday life into laughter. She talked about her childhood, the chaos of raising kids, the way life never quite goes according to plan. Her voice was relaxed, familiar, like she was chatting across a kitchen table instead of under hot lights. The audience loved it. You could hear it in the rhythm of their laughter, the kind that comes easily, without effort. The hosts nodded along. There were jokes, playful interruptions, quick back and forth comments that made the conversation feel alive. Leanne leaned forward as she spoke, hands moving naturally, eyes bright. She wasn't performing so much as sharing, and that honesty filled the room. Even Joy Behar smiled at first, tossing in a remark here and there, sharp but still wrapped in humor. As the conversation moved on, it drifted toward deeper territory, family values, personal boundaries, the things people laugh about but also quietly protect. Leanne spoke carefully, choosing words that reflected who she was without pushing them onto anyone else. She had built her career on kindness and relatability, and it showed. The audience quieted, listening, sensing the shift from punchlines to something more meaningful. Then Joy leaned back in her chair and made a comment that landed differently. It was meant to be funny, maybe even bold, but it cut closer than expected. A few people laughed out of habit, but the sound didn't spread. It stopped short, like a wave breaking too soon. Leanne blinked once, just once, her smile still there but no longer reaching her eyes. She responded calmly, adding a light joke to soften the moment, trying to guide the conversation back to safer ground. Her tone was polite, measured. For a second, it seemed to work. The energy steadied, the hosts exchanged looks, and someone quickly changed the subject. Leanne nodded along, letting it go, or at least trying to. But the comment lingered in the air, invisible yet heavy. A few minutes later, Joy circled back. This time the remark was clearer, less disguised. It poked at the same sensitive point, this time with less humor and more edge. The audience reaction was mixed, some uneasy laughter, some silence. Leanne's hands folded in her lap. She inhaled slowly, the way people do when they're deciding whether to speak or stay quiet. Her face showed thought, not anger. She answered again, firmly but respectfully, explaining her perspective without attacking anyone else's. Her voice didn't shake. If anything, it grew steadier. She spoke about respect, about how humor should lift people up, not reduce them to a punchline. A few audience members applauded softly, unsure if it was allowed. Joy shrugged, smiling in a way that suggested the conversation was just getting interesting. Another comment followed, short, dismissive, brushing aside what Leanne had just said. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it crossed an invisible line. The kind you don't see until you're already standing on the wrong side of it. Leanne paused. This time, the silence stretched. Cameras stayed on her face, capturing every second. She glanced toward the audience, then back to the table. Her smile faded completely, replaced by something quieter and more serious. Not hurt exactly, more like resolve. She spoke again, but now her words carried weight. She explained that everyone was entitled to their opinions, but that respect wasn't optional. She reminded them that jokes have consequences, that public conversations shape how people treat each other beyond the studio walls. Her voice stayed calm, but the room felt different, charged. The other hosts shifted in their seats. One tried to interject, offering a bridge, but the moment had already changed shape. The easy flow from earlier was gone. Even the lights seemed harsher now, the applause sign blinking uselessly above the audience. Leanne finished her thought and sat back. She didn't look angry. She looked tired, tired of having to defend basic dignity, tired of smiling through discomfort. The audience sensed it. No one laughed, no one clapped. The silence said more than noise ever could. Joy responded lightly, brushing it off as just conversation, but the words rang hollow. Leanne nodded once, slowly, as if acknowledging the response without accepting it. She glanced off stage for a brief second, a small movement most people wouldn't notice unless they were watching closely. That was when it became clear, something had shifted inside her. She straightened her posture, smoothing her hands over her dress, a subtle gesture of preparation. She looked at the hosts, then at the audience again. There was no drama yet, no raised voices or sudden movement. Just a woman realizing that staying seated might say more than she was willing to accept. The cameras rolled, the studio waited, and Leanne Morgan sat there, calm on the surface, deciding what came next. The pause stretched longer than television usually allows. In that quiet space, Leanne Morgan made a decision that felt both sudden and long overdue. She smiled politely, out of habit more than feeling, and thanked the hosts for having her. Her voice was even, almost gentle, but there was a finality to it that everyone could hear. Before anyone could redirect or joke their way out, she pushed her chair back and stood. Gasps rippled through the audience, soft but unmistakable. A producer off stage stiffened. One of the hosts reached out, palm up, as if to say, "Wait." Leanne shook her head slightly, not in anger, but in clarity. "I'm going to step away now," she said. "I believe in laughter, but I believe in respect more." Then she turned and walked toward the exit. The studio froze. Cameras hesitated, unsure whether to follow or stay wide. Applause broke out, not the thunderous kind prompted by a sign, but a scattered, sincere response. It grew as Leanne disappeared behind the curtain. Some people stood, others sat stunned, processing what they had just seen, a quiet boundary drawn in public. At the table, the host scrambled to recover. One tried to lighten the mood with a quick joke, but it landed awkwardly and fell flat. Another spoke about differing opinions and the importance of dialogue, words that sounded rehearsed even as they were improvised. Joy leaned back, arms crossed, expression unreadable. The show moved on, but the moment lingered like a shadow over everything that followed. Backstage, Leanne paused. A staff member offered water. She accepted, hands steady. Her heart was racing, but she felt lighter than she had moments before. She hadn't stormed out, she hadn't shouted, she had simply chosen herself. The producer thanked her for coming, voice careful, and promised someone would walk her out. Leanne nodded, already reaching for her phone. By the time she stepped outside, the story had begun to spread. Clips were being cut, captions drafted, opinions forming. Friends texted her support, fellow comedians sent messages, some brief, some long, sharing stories of moments they wished they'd handled the same way. Leanne replied to a few, then slipped her phone into her bag. She didn't want the noise yet. Later that afternoon, the internet did what it always does. Some praised her composure, calling it a masterclass in grace. Others accused her of overreacting, of misunderstanding humor, of being too sensitive. Leanne watched none of it. Instead, she sat with her team, replaying the moment not with regret, but with curiosity. "Could I have stayed?" someone asked. Leanne considered it. "Maybe," she said, "but staying would have meant laughing along. And I couldn't do that honestly." That evening, she posted a short message, nothing dramatic, no names mentioned. She wrote about kindness, about how laughter should never come at the cost of someone else's dignity, and about knowing when to walk away. The post traveled fast, shared by people who saw themselves in it. Comments poured in from viewers who felt heard, from parents grateful for an example, from young comedians learning where their lines might be. The next morning, the show addressed it. Carefully worded statements about mutual respect and lively discussion filled the opening minutes. No apologies, no accusations, just a recognition that not every moment lands the same way for everyone. The audience applauded politely. The host smiled, but the easy confidence from earlier episodes was gone, replaced by something more cautious. Interviews followed. Leanne was asked if she'd return. She smiled and said she loved conversation, but she loved boundaries too. She talked about comedy as connection, not combat. She reminded people that walking away isn't quitting, sometimes it's choosing a better ending. In comedy clubs and living rooms, the clip sparked conversations. Friends debated where humor ends and harm begins. Parents talked to their kids about speaking up calmly. Teachers used the moment to discuss respect in disagreement. The story became less about a walk-off and more about a choice, one made without shouting, without spectacle, and without cruelty. Weeks later, Leanne took the stage at a sold-out show. The crowd rose to their feet before she said a word. She waited for the applause to fade, then grinned. "Well," she said, "I've learned you don't have to raise your voice to be heard." Laughter filled the room, warm and familiar. She told stories, made jokes, and yes, she addressed the moment, but lightly, with the same kindness that had always defined her. The night ended with people leaving smiling, thinking, talking. And somewhere between the punchlines and the applause, the lesson settled in: respect isn't the opposite of humor. It's what makes humor worth sharing.